Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our next in our series of Data ESG webinars. This one, Simplifying Climate Disclosures with Emissions Management Software. My name is Roger Mills, and I'm the Manager of Sustainability and Social Impact for Data ESG. And with me is Christine Centafanti, who is Data ESG's Marketing Manager, as well as Shu Setagawa, who is the Business Development Manager for Aswene APAC, and the decarbonisation software for which Data ESG are Australian implementation partners. And Shu, welcome. You're joining us from Singapore today.
Well, thank you, Roger.
So I should also say, unfortunately, our ESG specialist, Carolyn Donnelly's, has taken ill, so is not going to be able to join us today, so I'm going to be standing in for her. I'd just like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm speaking to you today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, as well as acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands from which each of our panel members are living and working, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Also wish to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us here today. All right, so just a couple of housekeeping points before we move on. I'm going to start off the presentations with a bit of an overview of Data ESG and what we can be thinking about in terms of mandatory reporting and some of the concepts behind that, kind of basically setting it up for Shu to then take over and give us a demonstration of the Aswene decarbonisation platform. We will be leaving 10 or 15 minutes for questions right at the end, but please do post questions throughout if you've got them in the chat bar, and we'll come to them right at the end. All right, just line my slides up here. Okay, so look, this webinar builds on our first session, which covered mandatory reporting and compliance. We also covered reporting standards and frameworks and the role that Data ESG can play in helping you develop your strategies and frameworks and helping you with your climate disclosures and reporting them to the government. I think if you wanted to review that session, I'm sure Christine would be able to put that link in the chat as well. But this webinar really takes us a step further, examining some of the key issues related to mandatory reporting of climate disclosures, and really the role that a decarbonisation solution such as Aswene can play in collecting, analysing and reporting your emissions in line with the NGER, or the National Greenhouse Energy and Reporting Scheme, which is the scheme that we're governed under here in Australia. So I'm going to kick off this presentation, talk through some of those issues, and then Shu's going to walk us through a demonstration of Aswene. So a little bit about Data ESG for those who don't know us. Our mission really is to help businesses and organisations integrate sustainability into every aspect of your operations. We take a very data-driven approach to deliver practical solutions for credible and transparent outcomes, whether that's working with you to identify, collect, analyse and report your mandatory climate-related disclosures, or develop emissions reduction plans, roadmaps. We offer these as tailored consultation services aligned with global standards such as TCFD, GRI and SASB, which again, you'll be able to learn about in that first webinar, as well as key Australian frameworks, the NGER as I was just describing, and Climate Active and the ASX governance principles. So I'd like to begin really by highlighting what I think is sometimes missing in some of the ESG webinars that I've attended on these topics, which is really an overview of the actual effects of climate change on business and governance. It's just not an academic concept anymore. These risks are real, and like any business risk, they have to be managed. So these disruptions can be to supply chains, include higher costs to your business, and we've seen that most acutely with the impact of droughts and floods on, say, food prices, but also transportation. Transporting goods from one end of the country to another, where there's floods, obviously that makes it very difficult. And regulatory risk is also another key concern, really for all organisations. And failure to report accurate, verifiable data can result in quite hefty penalties, but also reputational damage, which is why I guess many organisations are getting out on the front foot and being proactive in this area, because you can actually use being proactive in this area as competitive advantage, as well as increasing investor confidence. And you'll also notice that I'm using businesses and organizations interchangeably here because one of our sort of biggest emerging client bases is actually local government. And I did notice that there's some people who are joining us today from local council. So welcome to you, and I hope you get a lot out of this as well. So let's think about climate reporting. It's no longer optional in Australia and in many international regions as well. We're now seeing frameworks like ISSB and TCFD being adopted around the world, and Australia is no different to that. Locally, this is, as I was describing earlier, coming through our own NGER scheme, as well as the upcoming Australian Sustainability Reporting Standards and Climate Active. Climate Active is a certification actually that Data ESG assists clients with to get them ready for Climate Active certification, which just means that your business will be certified as carbon neutral. So look, why is all of this happening? Well, for a number of different reasons, but for businesses, investors, regulators, and the community are demanding, credible, comparable climate data. And there's this sense to, driving this is to kind of unify that type of data. And just as one little fun fact here, according to PwC's 2023 Global Investor Survey, apparently 87% of investors said they believe corporate reporting should include climate risk data. And most said they would also divest from companies not taking action. So look, the pressure is real, and it's not just coming from government, but it's also market driven too. So who's actually required to report and when? Mandatory climate reporting in Australia, is currently being rolled out in phases, and is based on company size and financial footprint. Of course, this applies as much to local government and government departments as businesses. And we can see here from this slide that you've got your first reporting group, which was required to start reporting from the 1st of January 2025. And you have to meet one of two of these three thresholds here. So for, these are the larger companies with 500 million revenue or $1 billion in assets, or 500 employees plus. Really last year was when those companies were preparing to report this year, and it's really by the 31st of October this year that you're going to have to prepare those and submit those reports. And then that will be rolled out, and that's scope 1 and 2 at the moment, but 26, 27, 28, that's then going to include scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions as well. So group 2, the first annual reporting period will begin from the 1st of July next year, 2026. And that goes down to organizations with 200 million gross revenue or 500 million assets. Again, you really these are sort of medium-sized businesses or organizations that need to be preparing now, particularly for your scope 1 and 2 emissions, and then years 27, 28, 29, you'll be required to report on scope 1, 2, and 3 as well. Then we come down to our final group 3, which is your SMEs, really up to 50 million revenue, 25 million in assets. You've got a couple of years to prepare, but we would recommend really getting to grips with it now, so that by 26, 27, 28, I should say, reporting period, you're ready to start reporting those scope 1 and 2 emissions. And this little note at the bottom here, you've got to really make sure that those, what you're reporting explains all the methods and assumptions and evidence that you've gathered for your claims. And they must be kept like any tax record in Australia for the minimum period of seven years. So that's also worth bearing in mind as well. I thought we might just have a little look at the ASIC website, because there's a lot of really useful information here on sustainability reporting. While Data ESG and Ashwene can talk you through these processes, just get a an overview and understanding of what you need to do, there's a lot of really valuable resources in this website in terms of preparing for sustainability reporting, the administration, audit and assurance of sustainability reports, and so forth. All right, so let's talk a little bit about emissions. I've talked about scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions there, and many people know what they are, but so let's just talk a little bit about them. They're really divided into these 3 scopes. So scope 1 is your direct emissions. So they're emissions that you're creating as a company. That is, through burning fossil fuels or your company vehicles and the such like. Scope 2, which is where majority of companies will definitely have emissions to report, which is things like electricity, basically the emissions generated to power your offices and your operations. They are what we can consider as indirect scope 2 emissions. Then we go to scope 3 emissions. Again, indirect, that is your purchase goods, capital goods, fuel and energy related activities, transportation, likewise with the processing of sold products, investments, franchises, leased assets. So this is where you really need to start to understand what your supply chain are doing and what emissions they're creating. And I thought I'd just create this little graph here just to define some of these emissions so that we know what they are moving forward. All right, so look, some of you might be thinking, well, we have started this and we've started inputting these to Excel. We've got a burgeoning Excel workbook which is tracking all of this for us. And look, you wouldn't be alone if you're doing that. Many organisations, in fact, we've had meetings with 2 quite large Australian organisations just recently, and they're using spreadsheets as well. But I think we've all got to be honest, they're very, very time consuming, as well as potentially error prone. And when we start talking about scope 3 emissions, that level of complexity, without sort of version control, audit trails, you just can't measure those accurately enough. And it's really about, ASIC wanting to be able to verify that data, that it is accurate for assurance and auditability. So, that's something you really need to consider. In fact, another fun fact here, an eight-year study of how corporations address sustainability through the MIT Sloan Management Group found that 59% of sustainability teams spend more time actually gathering data than analysing it, right? So that's a huge impulse on your company, huge cost on your company. So, there's a choice here that's emerging. Do you spend the money resourcing someone to spend all that time on your spreadsheets, or do you invest in a software emissions management decarbonisation solution and allow your team to actually get on with strategizing and developing approaches to actually reducing your emissions? So they're all very valuable questions that we need to be asking ourselves. So look, reporting doesn't need to be this headache that it sort of appears to be sometimes. And if you don't know where to start, companies like Data ESG and Ashwene, we're here to help you. We can assess, do your materiality assessments, look at where your emissions are coming from, and start to build that knowledge base of what you need to do and when. We've got the knowledge in terms of the regulations and updates to be able to supply that type of information to you and embed that in your strategies. It does take time to collect and calculate and check the data as well. So that's why you really need to start sooner rather than later. And then you've got potentially more information that you need, such as data formats and units that may not be compatible with current methodology. So there's a knowledge problem and a data problem, and that's really where Ashwene and Data ESG can assist you. And this really is where an emissions management software like Ashwene can really assist you to automate things like data collection, grabbing data from your energy bills, travel systems, fuel usage, procurement records, to help you measure your GHG emissions so you can plan to reduce and offset them. And really also have confidence to report and assure that data. There are a lot of other functionalities that I'll let Shu take us through shortly. But one of the key things there that I'm very much aware of, is having that real-time dashboard functionality to be able to immediately check and track how you're traveling in terms of your strategy and your goals and where you're at. As well as, I think the other thing here, and this is where spreadsheets can't really do this, is having that full auditability with an ISO certified solution, ISO 1406 as Xuanhe is certified too, as well as being able to do things like collaborating across departments, finance, procurement, facility, sustainability, bringing it all together into one platform. So you're not going to need those spreadsheets, and your team can actually focus on things that are more important. And Carolyn actually was saying this to me the other day, and I think it's a nice little anecdote. Moving from spreadsheets or moving from a manual system into data management software like Xuanhe is, it's like going from those early flip phones to your first smartphone. It really changes how you work. How emissions, how you start to measure those emissions just takes on a completely new meaning, and it sort of starts with that reliable data, and that's where data ESG and Xuanhe really help to simplify and automate those data processes, reducing time and errors and reporting burdens as well. All right, so look, aside from compliance, there's real value and strategic benefits in getting this right, even ahead of the pack. In terms of competitive advantage, being seen to be proactive in this space gives you that competitive advantage. It can also lead to cost savings. Actually understanding where your energy is coming from, where your electricity is coming from, gives you that opportunity, as we've just done recently, to look at energy providers that are cheaper and greener, and how you can manage both sides of that coin. Of course, that will all lead to improved efficiency and productivity, and of course, recruitment and retention of your core talent of your workforce, your resources. People like to work for companies that have strong sustainability policies, as do consumers. They like to know that the products or services that they're purchasing come with that element of sustainability. All throughout this presentation so far, we've been talking about regulatory compliance, and that's of course one of the major drivers here, but also stakeholder and shareholder satisfaction. Talked before about investors more likely to ditch investments that aren't measuring up to sustainability targets. So it's meeting client expectations for tender bids. I know that myself with the bids that we do. Okay, we're a sustainability business, but I know others that are telling me this. For the first time, we're being asked what are our emissions, and these are SMEs that are having to state categorically what their emissions are and what they're doing to reduce them, and they're not due to report for another 2 or 3 years yet to be able to actually tender for a particular product or service. So they're being asked what their emissions are. So this is all leading to that innovative competitive advantage and revenue growth. So it's well worth thinking about this now and getting on the program. And this is pretty much all I've got for you. And I'm just going to lead you with this little quote. And thanks, Shu, for sharing this with me, because I think it's a nice one to take away. It's not about green ideology. It's as Peter Backer, their president of the World Business Council for Sustainability Development's saying there. Accountability for sustainability is not just about being green. It's actually about being in business in 10 years' time. So do feel free to contact us. I know we've been talking, Shu and I have been talking before this presentation. Be happy to do more tailored presentations of Xuanhe to you once you've had a look at what he's got for you today. Do feel free to contact me at the numbers there, as well as popping in, if you're in Melbourne, Sydney or Canberra, to one of our offices, and we can certainly arrange a meeting in one of those locations. So thank you so much for your time listening to this introduction. I'm going to hand over to Shu now, who's been waiting patiently in the wings. So over to you, Shu.
Thanks, Roger. And thanks for all the participants for joining us today. So let me switch over the screen. So let me start off my part by introducing ourselves. The first time that you saw our company name, all of you might have been wondering, how do I pronounce this and what does Asuene mean? It's actually embodying our company mission. So Asuene is a company that's headquartered in Japan, and we are driven to change the world for the next generation. And Asuene, you can remember the name by breaking it down into two parts. Asu in Japanese means tomorrow, is also a Japanese pronunciation of earth, with ene being the short form of energy. So what we envision to do is to focus on how the energy is being consumed today, as well as the carbon emissions, so that we can achieve sustainable earth for tomorrow's generation. And that's how the name Asuene came about. So our solution is really focusing on simplifying and improving sustainability initiatives, because sustainability, while it's a single word, it is really a complex issue. It's very, very multifaceted. So our job is to make sure that the companies we work with will find it a simplified way to focus on what is really important. With point number one, focusing on decarbonization as an end goal. So today our offering is mainly focusing on talking about technology achieving efficiency, but ultimately we're not limiting ourselves to providing the technology or the platform, but working with each of the users to assist end-to-end journey to decarbonize, which is to use the platform to measure. We help to analyze and provide insights, come up and recommend strategies for reduction and offset so that we can achieve that decarbonization. And the second point is really about using the technology to make your carbon reporting as easy as possible. So that's really focusing on the data integration, efficiency, the accuracy. And then point number three is about evolving with time, which is going to be about how the regulatory changes take place and how do we make sure that our users are future-proofed from all these changes. So how we achieve this is actually in the business model, where we define it as a hybrid model. So on one end, Asuene platforms is designed in a way to allow for the easy, efficient, and accurate climate reporting using technologies such as AI, optical character recognition, API, essentially to minimize the errors coming from spreadsheets, as well as to automate some of the interactions between different softwares. But at the same time, in partnership through the likes of Data ESG, as well as our consultants working with each of the users, we also make sure that we can provide proper guidance, the onboarding, the education of how to use the platform better to maximize the experience so that our climate platform can be more suitable to the particular data sets you have, the industries that you're in, and provide references in the case studies as well. So really going back to the challenges that Roger shared in terms of the data as well as the knowledge issues that the companies have, we need to tackle these all together. And in our hybrid model, we are really addressing all of these issues together, therefore maximizing the value that are coming out from the experience. Now, today, Asuene, we are considered a non-carbon platform within Asia Pacific. So we have about 10,000 companies that we're supporting today. Majority of that is actually based in East Asia because that is our base. But we have been working very closely with our partners in Australia to also expand our footprint, as well as to make sure that there's going to be a strong localized support there as well. So before going to the demo, I just wanted to start off by sharing a couple of case studies that might be more relatable. Something to just highlight a bit of the power of what happens when you implement a platform solutions. So one example is us working with a very, very iconic rooftop bar in Singapore, which is actually present across different countries. The challenge they had was they wanted to do the reporting, but the reporting is not enough because now with the new shareholders they have, they are giving a 5%, 10% KPI evaluations that are tagged to the climate goals. So all of the managements, if they don't achieve 5% in the reduction, then 10% of the bonus is gone. So that's going to be the world, a scary world that we all might encounter one day. But the real challenge is that it's no longer just a corporate goal, but it is everybody, all of the stakeholders' goal. Because as a company, they set the goal, they announced it, they need to reduce it. Therefore, tracking is no longer enough. So how we came in was to achieve that level of efficiency, moving from the Excel that creates a lot of time-consuming efforts in consolidation, checking for errors, making sure all of your databases are updated. You build it strong enough that it doesn't become a silo so that you can still do your historical comparisons. And as we move away from Excel into the platform of Asuene, the likes of Asuene, different countries, the data owners can now directly key in the data into the platform, saving a lot of time for the sustainability office. And because different offices are uploading the data on their own, it allows for the granular analysis of month-on-month, as well as the site-by-site. And the system is also built with the process to check for errors, therefore saving a lot of time, as well as assuring that level of accuracy as well. What they've also identified through this exercise is that by having a stronger platform or having a better process for granular analysis, it's no longer just looking at the emissions at the end of the year and they're hoping that you've achieved some sort of a reduction. But by having a monthly data per site, you can actually do a comparison and saying this location has more emissions that are coming from electricity consumption, which is 60% of the entire operation. So now you know that by reducing the electricity consumption that comprises the 60% of the emissions, it is then easier for you to come up with a roadmap of saying we're going to achieve 5% year-on-year reduction for the next 10 years. So the level of granularity you have and the efficiency of the process that you have through building this kind of platform is really that you can identify areas, not just tracking the emissions as an annual disclosure, but really about building that process, the habit of analysis, where you can identify the reduction areas that are also often associated with the cost reduction areas as well. Because obviously, if you reduce your fuel consumption, if you reduce your electricity consumptions, you're going to be saving on operational costs as well. And also noting that the prices of these are going up every year. So if you don't track and optimize today, then the chances of you paying more for these is going to be higher and higher. And another example we are doing is actually an Australia project. You can see that evidently I purposely chosen a very alcohol-based case study so that it becomes more entertaining. It's kind of an exciting project that we're doing at the moment with the South Australian government. It's in collaboration with Australia Grape and Wine Association as well as the AWS. The idea is by having a platform that allows for easier data entry as well as a data share, working with the Wine Association, we've identified different wineries, the grape growers, the logistics companies, to be able to key in the data that are associated with the different life cycle activities, which then afterwards, or after all the data is keyed in, it becomes consolidated into the product level. So this is quite different from a traditional Scope 1 to 3 emissions measurement. This is called a product carbon footprint that is following the life cycle assessment stages. But by having granularity of the data, technology unlocking the potential of it, you can also embark on a journey of saying this particular product equals how much CO2. And everyone that are involved in the supply chain can contribute by putting the data in to the similar sort of a platform. So those are some of the potentials that the platform can unlock, and is really something that can drive an impact beyond just measuring for the reporting. So what I'm going to do now is to just kind of go into the platform demo itself and demonstrate how the platform functions. So on Asune platform, the first thing you see is this dashboard view. So I'll zoom out a bit. You will see a dashboard view that is tabulating your past 3 historical years of your Scope 1 to 3 emissions, your visualized charts of your emissions, as well as your monthly trends and the data collection trends. And all of these data sets or the navigation on the platform can easily toggle between different companies, different countries, and different business functions. So when you want to deep dive into any specific segment, you'll be able to kind of navigate and change them as well. Now, when you want to deep dive into emissions profile, you go into the details, and essentially you're going to see more of an itemized list as well. So this is how you can identify hotspots. Now, the most important thing about having a platform is really about ease of use. And when we talk about ease of use, the most often challenges and the pain points we hear is in the data collection. So data uploading process is the most important part for most of the user's experience. So some of the methods that we have to automate or minimize errors on the platform is really allowing for people to upload things like utility bills and invoices directly. So that could be things like let's say you have an invoice from an electricity provider such as this, multiple pages documents. You can upload this as it is. And our system is built with an AI and OCR combined, meaning that the system has an ability to pick up and learn the format, and the OCR, the optical character recognition, to pick up the relevant information from the document. So from here, it picks up that, okay, the consumption of electricity is 4,202.087 kilowatt, and the amount associated with it is this. And based on the location of the Victoria, it has picked up that, okay, it is a reference in a Victoria's location-based emissions. So by having ability to upload invoices and receipts, it can save a lot of time for those data owners, as well as minimizing the errors from simply eyeballing and putting in manually on an Excel. And then also another benefit, we also talked about limited assurance and auditability of data, is that now this invoice is retained together with your entry. So therefore, when you review it later on, then you can actually cross-reference and check whether the entry and the invoice or the supporting documents will match. Now, elsewhere, we are also designed to build for multiple operations, multiple data owner operations. In some cases, the invoice and the receipts will be a great way. But in some cases, the data owners might be managing multiple data points, and it might not be feasible or realistic for them to upload like 10s and 20s of invoices. In such case, you could create a template, which could be pre-filled and assigned to different offices. And what it is really is an ability to flexibly create these input formats where, let's say, if a data owner is residing in Queensland, and then you kind of save this template, so then you assign that to the particular data owner based in Queensland, so that they could come in and then know what exactly is expected, key in the details. If they want to check it versus the last month or last year, it becomes easy to preview, as well as adding the attachments here as well. Now, when the company embark on even a larger sort of a data points journey, which is usually scope 3, and when you go in a scope 3 and you start measuring the emissions coming from the purchased goods and services, then you realize that you will have thousands of line items every month. When that happens, usually the companies still like to rely on the raw data that are coming from the ERP, or all the purchase records that are managed in a table on an Excel. So the system also allows for an uploading of an Excel-based file. And what will happen then, and what is really critical and what differentiates between an Excel and having a specialized platform, is an ability to check for errors. So in this case, the Excel had issue, which is there was an empty cell, which is the business name. So the platform doesn't allow for any missing field to be entered or registered. So now that I've corrected it, we can see that this month there's a 1 million kilowatt of electricity use. Definitely not good for the environment, or it's probably wrong. It's very high. So when you register, then the system will pick up that it's exceeded that acceptable threshold of the 20% difference versus the last month. So things like this, checking for errors on the platform, will be some of the specialized features that you can expect from the climate platform, and why a lot of the enterprise companies are moving away from Excel into the platform, to make it more verifiable, to make it more error-free, and to make it more efficient. So of course you can still put it through because it could be correct, but if you put it through with comments, then at least you retain that trail of comments. So when it comes to the auditing, the verifications, then you have some sort of a record in there. You can do the same with the attachments. So when you turn on the attachment alerts, if anybody just simply manually key in the data without supporting documents, then the alert could be created. So that's one other way also to differentiate versus the spreadsheets where everything is sort of scattered, and then only when people ask for the evidence data, then you have to start asking around. Do you have any invoice for this month? Can you give it to me? Why is it wrong? Why is it not mentioned in Excel? What happened? But with the platform, you don't want to have all of these hassle. So essentially, after all the data is keyed in, everything will be managed under this list of entered data, which will retain the critical information such as the business units, who uploaded it for which date, for which month, scope and a category, as well as what kind of emission factor and emission factor data sources are being referenced, and CO2E equivalent, as well as the attachments. Now, another benefit and the advantage of having a specialized platform is really in terms of the maintenance. One of the pain points that we hear often from companies managing on the spreadsheets is really that on spreadsheets, it becomes very siloed. So whoever has created an Excel file and whoever is updating it, it tends to become very dependent on that person, especially in terms of the maintenance or updating the emission factors. But when you have specialized platform that constantly updates emission factors and also to add and expand on the databases of it, you're going to have then the ability, the scalability and the flexibility that when you're changing your methodology or when a new financial year starts and you want to update your library of what you're referencing as an emission factor, you have an ability to kind of go into the database and then enter whatever most up-to-date emission factor is available. So just give it a moment. I think my Chrome is becoming very heavy. That should resolve in a minute. Let's refresh this. So while refreshing, I would like to highlight why this is important. Is because especially when you start on the scope 3, your methodology will most likely evolve over time, which is you might start first year predominantly using a spend-based method, which means you're using your finance data to measure the carbon emissions. But as you identify the key suppliers that are contributing to the larger percentage of emissions, then you might want to switch into targeting these key profiles to say the carbon emissions coming from these suppliers equals to X TCO2E. And then as you start to collect data from them, then you switch from a spend-based method into a more of a supplier-specific based. Okay, just I'll close a couple of windows. Yeah, apologies for the bit of a hiccup. I think it's since this webinar platform is also running on a Chrome, it's making it a little bit heavy. Okay, back in. Yeah, so with a specialized platform, how the RCNA works in terms of the emission factors is that there are layers to your emission factors. One, whatever you access will be the ones that are available for you to key in. Second layer is the control when you have a bigger sort of a library where you can see and activate on and off. So whenever there's an update in terms of your methodology, you can easily switch between the two. Whereas on the spreadsheets, somebody will have to map the entire thing again and then add new emission factors. And another thing about the emission factors is often that the companies that are going a little bit beyond using the public sources, those that are using the life cycle assessment-based emissions or purchasing a licensed emission factors that are more granular, then it becomes very, very hard to embed into an Excel. But with a specialized platform like Aswene, you'll be able to use most of these licensed emission factors. One example of that could be like AORA, that is a country-specific spend-based emissions. So then if you want to break down the emissions based on the country of origin, then that also becomes very easy as well. So for example, in here, you'll notice that there's an Australia-based spend emission factors across different sort of items. So that level of granularity, accuracy improvement with the emission factor choices is also going to be some of the benefits that could be expected. Now, I'm also going to show a couple of key features in terms of the setting. So with the upcoming ASRS, what's going to be quite important is that it aligns with the ISSB standards, which is going to become a limited assurance of your data. So how you're managing data, how you're making your data sets protected from errors is going to be one of the key. You could activate something like a work approval flow. So whenever someone key in the data, you could have someone else to check and verify. And the moment the final approver checks the data, ticks the box, it locks the data from being edited. So then it protects that data point from being modified. And you could create alerts for the file attachment, which I've demonstrated earlier. You could also check for the duplicated data, so there's never double accounting. And you could also leverage from AI agents. Now, with the AI agents embedded into the platform, you could actually pull the data directly from your system and ask key questions. For example, just asking like, hey, what's my hotspot? Or you could say like, do I have any data gaps in my submission? Which month is it? So then you can easily identify which ones to revisit and collect data. And you could even do a sensitivity check saying that if I were to make this change in this data set, how would it look like? So then the AI can generate these comparisons. So the technology is becoming more and more advanced, which Asuene is in a position to constantly evolve, add different regulatory requirements into place to make sure that our users always stay ahead of the game, as well as being future protected. So now, just in conscious of the time to leave 15 minutes for Q&A, I'll wrap up my platform demo. But essentially, Asuene, what we envision to do is to provide an intuitive platform that makes the job easier. So whenever you log in, for the first 5 minutes, you probably know where things are, how to use it. But again, the real challenge in carbon reporting is not about understanding how to use a platform, but it's even before and beyond that, which is what kind of data do I collect? What methodology is suitable for me? How do I do my scope 3? How do I improve the data accuracy? And then after you measure, how do I analyze? How do I reduce these? Which is all the support that we're providing in our hybrid model. So I'll end it off here and then maybe open up for questions.
Thank you very much, Shu. That's really great. We do have a question from Enrico. Question really is, don't most auditors ask for data exports, XLSX or CSV, for instance, to do their assurance testing? And don't most platforms have them as a standard feature? What would be your response there?
Yeah, so I'm glad this kind of question came up because I have been emphasizing and focusing a lot on this auditability of the data sets. So generally, when the auditors are looking at the data, they will definitely ask for these data exports. But what these data exports are often missing will be like historical changes that's been made over time, as well as whether the entry itself is correct. Because with the Excel exports, and if you have any sort of an error, or if they pick up on an outlier, let's say like, hey, how come this month has 200% increase from the other month? Then if you don't have any data that are retained together, like supporting documents, then the person will have to like go back and forth and like check where it came from, as well as to maybe collect the supporting documents. And then it becomes a very messy process. So how we tackled it was, number one is to kind of minimize, nip the bud by having sort of an outlier checks as a feature. And also the data exports that we have in terms of the audit trail will also have a timestamp of the activities. So it's not just the key records, but it's like who performed what kind of activity on the platform as well, which is uploaded this data, who checked it, who verified it when. So with that, double record of the activity as well as the actual activities, then the auditors can now check and say that, okay, your data looks, it's not modified by anyone accidentally. The activity data, I've checked across together with the invoice, the supporting documents, it looks pretty correct. So that kind of makes the auditability a lot stronger.
I hope that's answered your question there, Enrico. Anybody else got a question? Perhaps while we're waiting, if anyone has. Shu, something that comes up with data ESG quite a lot is integration with third-party systems. Now, data ESG have a DevOps team which can assist with this as well. But can you speak to your experience of integrating Asuene with third-party systems?
Yeah. We definitely get a question a lot. A lot of the companies are just imagining this magical world where they don't have to touch anything and everything is integrated. Right. So we do that. However, the challenge with Scope 1 to 3 is that you probably have a data sitting all over the place. And sometimes integration is a great way to save time, but might not be the most effective in terms of the accuracy level. So connecting with SAP and then pulling that purchase data or the spend data on the purchase is the most demanded sort of a realm of integration. But that locks you into the methodology of only using a spend-based method. So then if they want to move up and then collect data from suppliers, then you have to switch back and forth again between a different sort of a methodology. So one thing that we do at Asune is we don't say, okay, you're gonna integrate, you're gonna achieve this world of not touching a thing. We say it direct and transparent that this is gonna save this amount of work for your scope 3 here, but these you still have to manage different methods. And one of the advantages that we bring is the flexibility with the methodology.
Another question I'm imagining that people might be asking, thinking to themselves, whether they're asking it or not. We've got a lot of sustainability managers here and people whose roles it is to look at this for their organization. They've done their materiality analysis. They know what their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions are. I've spoken all the way through about how data ESG can assist with all of that. If a company's already got all of that together, what would be the first step for S1E, would you say?
Yeah, I think the companies that have the data already, the better thing to think about next would be, I guess, the 2 things. One is whether you can have any analytical insights about it to identify areas of reduction. And the second part is like, how do you set targets? And ultimately, it's about like, why are you doing this for? Because some companies are doing this because of the supply chain pressure. Some companies are doing it because they have to do it because of the reporting. But ultimately, we want to encourage companies to think about it from fundamentally what is sustainability. I think which connects back to the quote that you were sharing earlier about being business in 10 years. Because sustainability is really about having more data around your operation. And then by having that, you can integrate that into your business strategies. How do you optimize your energy usage? How do you optimize your fuel consumptions? And how do you come up with a sustainable procurement policy so that you're choosing the right partners to purchase from, where they're going to be in the business for the next 10 years? So you're not buying from someone who's going to like liquidate in the next 1 or 2 years. So I think fundamentally having more data sets about environmental, social, and governance, coming up with a strategy, setting the targets, making sure that you're actually paying attention and achieving that reduction year on year. Those are actually very, very helpful to the businesses. So like we always encourage, don't just limit it to measuring, looking at it once a year, disclosing, not look at it again until the next year, same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I know just because we've been talking, 2 of us have been talking to a potential client just recently, and within those discussions came up about Shuane ESG and some of the other solutions that you have. Could you maybe speak to the Shuane ESG and how that fits into the scheme of what we've been talking about today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So again, as I was mentioning, sustainability, I think it's really a sort of a broad topic. It's never really about like one single thing, although sustainability is a single one. So us we are envisioning to become like a sustainability conglomerates that are solving different issues that sits within the topic. So today we talked mainly about carbon emissions because that's often the most talked about. But like procurement, sustainable procurement policies, how do you assess and identify the risk that are sitting with who you're working with from an environmental, social, and governance, which is, do they have the relevant ISO? Do they track the training hours? What about modern slavery? Do they conform to all of these things? We have a tool that helps you assess that, which is called Asune ESG. We also have another arm, which is focusing on the carbon credits. Offset strategies are becoming more and more sensitive nowadays as well, because a lot of the bodies have fallen under the greenwashing scandals, and they're not managing these credits properly. So credits is still going to be, offset is still going to be a key and important strategies, but transparency is becoming more and more important as well. So we're trying to tackle that issue by having another solution that's specialized in carbon credits as well as renewable energy. So we're expanding more and more like the offerings to make sure that us being a single point can help client to solve multiple issues that are sitting within the sustainability.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm kind of loath to kind of bring this up, but I know recently Ashwene purchased Net Zero in the United States. And I only bring this up because of the previous question that I posed around third-party integrations and automating, I guess, the utility management of emissions. Is it too early to speak about this, or?
I mean, I could share as a principle of why that happened, and then maybe just on the concept of why automation is a great thing in certain categories. So we've recently acquired a business called NGER, which is a US-based energy management solution. So energy management solutions are often very, very specialized and focused on tracking your electricity patterns in a granular manner. So one way to achieve that, or at least in the US, is that multiple electricity providers offering the integration opportunities with the solution providers. So NGER, the solution, will essentially, without anyone having to upload, will just pull the utility consumption data. And then since there's nobody intervening in the process, it's automatically assumed to be correct and accurate. It comes direct from the source. And by having that data, which is granular to the asset level, because usually the electricity providers will have it at an asset level, although the invoices usually come in at an entity level. It really helps to see like what are the real sources that are over-consuming electricity. So for some, it doesn't have to be integration with the utility provider. If you are the manufacturer with the IoT sensors or energy management system, building management systems with such granularity of like different assets, different activity, different month, hours, minutes, then those data integration can really help the analysis and strategies of like what are the areas to optimize and reduce.
So that would mean really that there'd be so little room for error in terms of that data straight from your utility providers going straight into the system.
That's right. Error minimization and granularity for analysis and strategizing. These are basically the things that will come out from automation.
Yes, yeah. When do you think that that's likely to come on board as a system that you're going to be offering?
Cannot say for sure, but if we're looking at just the outcome, it is something that's available today, even on Aswene. So if the client has like energy management system or IoT, then it's just integrating the two. The advantage that NGER has is really that they already have a partnership with a lot of the utility providers. But the platform functionality is already something that's available on Aswene.
Great. Well, unless there's any other questions, there hasn't been any others in the feed at the moment. So I'd just like to thank you, Shu, so much for a great presentation, really informative. And yes, great virtual round of applause there too. Now, Christine, you're going to be sending out some recordings. Do you want to speak to what might be the next steps for anyone who might want to share this webinar to their colleagues or anyone who didn't even weren't able to make it?
Yeah, so this webinar has been recorded. It will be uploaded to our YouTube site, and everyone will, the people that have attended and haven't, will actually receive a link to the webinar. So you can share it around internally, colleagues, externally. It's obviously public.
Excellent. So if you want to get a recording of it, you'll be hearing from Christine very shortly. And that's really all we have for you today. So thank you everyone who's been attending. Again, if you'd like to find out more about Ashwene and Data ESG, Nathan, we can follow you up there. Happy to line up another demonstration, more tailored demonstration to your particular circumstances, and look at how we can help you into the future. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.